Well, hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I, of course, am he, Mr. Warren Hayes, welcoming you to another podcast where for a couple of hours we will be talking about professional wrestling right here on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes or on your favorite podcast application. Thank you very much for joining me again this week. If you wouldn't mind, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or a 5-star rating on Spotify to help out the channel, make it grow and all that good stuff, as well as a like on YouTube. These things help out tremendously, and it would be very much appreciated. In the meantime, I like talking about wrestling. That's why we're here for a couple of hours. If you like talking about wrestling, join the Mr. Warren Hayes Show Discord server. The link is in the description as I swat the microphone. For some reason, this microphone hasn't done anything to anyone ever except provide like sensible and quality audio. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why I'm suddenly angry at it. I like the microphone. It's a good microphone. I apologize, microphone. I feel bad. I really do. Well, I don't really do. I'm just playing it up for the bit. Let's be honest. We've got a show. We have got ourselves a show. New Japan Dominion review is what we're going to be doing, and I recorded the review on Sunday on the day of the show, so I didn't have an opportunity to talk about the G1 field, but I did get an opportunity to talk about it on stream this week. So we're adding that to the review overall, or look. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that at some point in the review, I'm going to be talking about the play-ins and the playoffs. We don't know the structure because at that point we didn't. Now we know, so I was able to add that in because I'm clever like that. We're going to talk about the Jon Moxley lawsuit. We're going to talk about AEW contracts coming in, specifically private party, and what does that entail for AEW. Just a lot of cool topics this week. I find it's a good week for some cool topics. Thank you everyone for joining me. Let's just get to it. Jon Moxley and AEW are sued for negligence, civil assault over a 2023 Dynamite incident. A civil lawsuit filed in Michigan accuses Jon Moxley of deviating from the script and injuring a production team member during a 2023 episode of AEW Dynamite. As first reported by John Alba of Sports Illustrated, the suit was filed by Christopher Dispenza in Wayne County on May 30. Dispenza claims he suffered significant injuries, including cervical, spine, and shoulder damage, requiring surgery after being shoved to the ground by Moxley during the May 10, 2023 broadcast. The incident occurred during the steel cage match between Moxley and Kenny Omega that headlined the show. Dispenza, who was not an AEW employee and had been brought in by Little Caesars Arena to work the event, was instructed to hand Moxley a screwdriver during the match. The lawsuit alleges that Dispenza was given no warning that Moxley would physically engage with him afterward by shoving him. Now there's a clip here, which I'm not going to play. I'm not going to play the clip. You've probably seen it on social media. If not, it's fairly easy to find, and the video is on AEW's YouTube as well. So very easy to find. Just for purposes of my stuff staying up, I'm going to refrain here. Hey, Big Mac Dogs, nice to see you and welcome. What we are going to do here is we're going to crack open the complaint and we're going to read it. It's been a while since we've read a lawsuit on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show stream. It has been a while, and it's 9 pages. It's not as if we're, look, we went through the entire Janelle Grant complaint. That was like 70-some pages, right? We can do 9. So Christopher Francis Dispenza versus All Elite Wrestling and Jonathan David Good, aka Jon Moxley, an individual. He is being represented by Thomas W. James. I thought it was Thomas Wayne. And I was like, don't walk down the alley alone, the crime alley alone tonight, Thomas Wayne. Robert M. Rate, which are from Rate Law PLLC. Plaintiff Christopher Francis Dispenza, aka Dispenza moving forward. At all times relevant, was a resident of the city of St. Cloud County of Osceola. and state of Florida. Defendant All Elite Wrestling is an interstate corporation operating with its principal place of business in the city of Jacksonville, county of Duval, state of Florida, and does regular and consistent business in the state of Michigan, specifically in the county of Wayne. Jonathan David Good, aka Jon Moxley, hereinafter Moxley. Interesting that they're going to keep the gimmick. They're going to refer to the gimmick name and not like his actual name. Interesting though. I don't know. It's probably just fine. I just think it's interesting. At all times relevant, was a resident of the city of Cincinnati, county of Hamilton, and state of Ohio. At all times relevant, defendant AEW was conducting business in Michigan, specifically in the Little Caesars Arena in the city of Detroit, county of Wayne, state of Michigan. Defendant AEW hosts such events in Michigan in a continuous and systematic manner as part of its business. Defendant Moxley, at all relevant times, was employed by defendant and an agent or otherwise under the control and direction of defendant AEW. As part of his employment, agency, and or contractual obligations, defendant Moxley would travel interstate and perform at various locations, such as he was doing on the night of May 10, 2023 at the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, Michigan. Venue is proper in Wayne County under terms because the injury occurred in Wayne County and the defendant AEW conducts significant and consistent business by promoting, forming, and holding events in Wayne County, as well as maintaining other connections to Wayne County. The amount in controversy exceeds $25,000. I don't know how much he's claiming. I'm excited to see how this goes. Factual allegations. On or about May 10, 2023, plaintiff was a business invitee of Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, Michigan as a production team member for the event defendant AEW was putting on within the arena. Plaintiff was tasked with holding a screwdriver for defendant Moxley to use during the performance. Plaintiff was not a performer and was not warned of spontaneously becoming a performer. Plaintiff held the screwdriver for defendant Moxley to take it from his hand as intended and scripted. Upon receiving the item and without warning, explanation, or prior discussion, defendant Moxley unexpectedly deviated from the planned script by placing his hands on plaintiff's face and shoulder and violently shoving plaintiff to the ground. Right. Plaintiff sustained extensive injuries as a result of this violent and unscripted assault, ultimately culminating in surgical procedures of cervical spine surgery? What? Shoulder surgery plus other serious injuries that necessitate significant medical treatment. You know, I've seen a lot of people go, oh, what a pussy, it doesn't, just learn to take a bump. And they're like, yeah, but here, I want to give this guy the benefit of the doubt, okay? He's not a trained pro wrestler. He doesn't know how to take a bump. He doesn't know how to fall properly to make sure that he doesn't hurt himself. That, wrestlers are trained to do that. He wasn't, right? So, Mox, goes off script here, decides to get a little rowdy, decides to, push this guy around a little bit. I buy it. Sure. Did Mox think this guy was perhaps a one of these local talents that they bring in to do all sorts of bullshit roles? Sure. I like the idea that he was instructed. We'll see how this all shakes out here. But, he says, I was instructed to do this. I was instructed to hold the thing and was never told that I was going to be a performer. I'm like, wow, okay. I'm excited to see how that one turns out. But let's go. Count 1, negligent hiring, training, supervision, and retention as to defendant AEW. Plaintiff reaffirms, and incorporates by reference all allegations in paragraph 1 to 17. I haven't been saying the numbers of the paragraphs, but I'm sure you don't mind. Defendant AEW owed plaintiff the duties below, including but not limited to the duty to hire, train, supervise, and discipline competent employees with agents within defendant's company or productions. The duty to train and supervise employees to ensure the safety of independent contractors like plaintiff and others on the premises. The duty to ensure performances are conducted in a manner that is safe for the performers, the production crew, and the general audience. The duty to exert reasonable control over its employees, agents, and or contracted individuals to ensure the safety of other performers, production crew, and the general audience. The duty to perform basic background checks on employees, agents, and or contracted individuals. Oh, brother, welcome to pro wrestling. The duty to avoid hiring individuals with documented criminal histories involving assault, battery, and other physical offenses to people or property, as well as a propensity for being otherwise uncontrollable. Someone's having a rude awakening to the world of pro wrestling here. And the duty to hire, train, supervise, and discipline employees, agents, and or contracted individuals to ensure their adherence to AEW policies and procedures, the law, and public safety. Upon information and belief, defendant Moxley had a history of disciplinary issues before this incident involving other people while under defendant's AEW's employee, agency, and or contractual relationship. What? Where does this come from? The past disciplinary offenses by defendant Moxley include a documented history of unpredictability as well as a lack of control by defendant AEW, all of which are known or should have been known to defendant AEW at the time of the assault. What am I forgetting here? When did Mox go off the handle backstage on people? CM Punk, maybe? Where are these well-documented instances of Jon Moxley having disciplinary issues with other people? Like, it is my understanding that Mox backstage is extremely well liked and is perceived as a locker room leader. Like, unless I'm really trying to dig deep, but unless there's stuff that happened with CM Punk, like, I failed to see what these things would be. And here's another question. Here's very quickly. This dude was like, he was hired by the Little Caesars Arena to come do this, right? He's not even on staff with AEW. How the fuck does he know all of this? He subscribes to the Observer. Like, obviously. But even in the Observer, like, I don't remember anything in that like reported, well-documented moments where Jon Moxley flew off the handle backstage. I think he might have him confused with Phil Brooks. I'm sure Jon has moments, just like all pro wrestlers do. Gets a little pissed, gets a little angry. What are these well-documented moments? He threw Darby down a flight of stairs. Yeah, the guy, don't you remember when he attacked the Rock and Roll Express? There you go. The guy thinks all of this is a shoot. He's attacking the elderly. He's crippling young wrestlers live on television. And he's still on TV. No, there's no sanctions imposed. It's just bad booking by AEW. Thought the Death Riders were a shoot, brother. There you go. Legitimately, I'm kind of baffled by this. I'm baffled by this. Defendant AEW's negligence was a proximate cause of plaintiff being seriously injured, suffering a cervical fusion surgery. Can you suffer a surgery? Isn't that weird wording? Unless it's very legalese to say it that way. Suffering a cervical fusion surgery, like it should be an injury. You suffer an injury, you don't suffer surgery. You suffer after surgery. But you suffer an injury, not a surgery. Suffering a cervical fusion surgery, shoulder surgery, back, radiculopathy. I wish J.K. Schwal was here to explain what all of this was. Plus other injuries to other parts of his body, currently known or unknown. Like, I know this is legalese. That I know, but every time I see this stuff, every time I see that, it's funny. He suffered all of these injuries that we listed above, plus others we don't know about. There's all the other injuries that are upcoming. The gallbladder stones, It's on Jon Moxley, tossing him to the floor. You know, the sprain he's going to get when he tries to skateboard and look cool in front of his nephews, be Jon Moxley's fault. Some or all of which interferes with the enjoyment of life and experiencing great pain and suffering. What is ridiculopathy? We gotta learn ourselves, folks. We gotta get learned. Ridiculopathy describes a range of symptoms produced by the pinching of a nerve root in the spinal column. Okay, the pinched nerve can occur at different areas along the spine. Symptoms of ridiculopathy vary by location, but frequently include pain, weakness, numbness, and tingling. Okay, that sucks. Like, honestly, that sucks. I feel like, if you take a bad spill, that's probably something that can easily happen to you, especially if you're not a tough guy working out or whatever. Defendant AEW's negligence was a proximate cause of plaintiff sustaining a permanent serious disfigurement in the form of a surgical scar on his neck, which is unsightly and embarrassing. Wherefore, plaintiff now claims judgment for whatever amount is found to be entitled, plus court costs, attorney fees, and interest from the date of filing this complaint. All right, so that was count one. Count two, civil assault and battery as to defendant Moxley. Plaintiff reaffirms and incorporates all reference to all allegations in paragraphs 1 and 22. Defendant Moxley's unscripted actions and actions described above caused plaintiff to reasonably believe that harmful or offensive contact was imminent. However, plaintiff, what? However, plaintiff, what? What does that mean? That I'm convinced is that this is not escaping the ChatGPT allegations, folks. Defendant Moxley's unscripted actions and movements were overt, such that any reasonable person would have felt apprehension of harmful or offensive contact. Sure. Defendant Moxley assault and battery plaintiff by, this is absolutely written by AI, isn't it? Defendant Moxley assault, or is it? Okay, look, let's just continue. Defendant Moxley assault and battery plaintiff, it should have been assaulted and battered plaintiff, right? By deviating from the planned script and violently and unexpectedly shoving plaintiff to the ground. Defendant Moxley's actions show a clear intent to harm plaintiff, or at a minimum, a complete disregard for whether harm was a result. Defendant Moxley's actions did harm plaintiff, the extent of which is still unknown, as plaintiff continues to have physical issues related to the incident. Wherefore, plaintiff now claims judgment for whatever amount he is found to be entitled, including, but not limited to, exemplary damages, plus court costs, attorney fees, and interest from the date of filing this complaint. Look, I'm gonna advocate for the dude here, okay? Because this guy is not a trained pro wrestler. We have to underscore this, and we have to be reasonable. Even though there's a few things that come off as comical to us as pro wrestling fans, as we read in the first count, that we're kind of like, it's kind of funny, But this guy's not a trained pro wrestler, doesn't know how to take bumps. So Mox shoves Brody King, Wheeler Yuta, Kenny Omega, Swerve Strickland. Those guys instinctively know how to fall in the best possible way to protect themselves. Mr. Dispenza is just going to fall to the ground with, in the most unsafe way, because he was not expecting it. He is not part of the show and will not fall in a way to protect himself. He's just going to land because he doesn't have the training, doesn't have the instincts. He doesn't know how to do it. So, because sometimes, I kind of think like, I've thought about it in the past, and I was like, oh, well, what, if I, you just sit around and you think about things. Oh, what if I took a bump? What if, Powerhouse Hobbs, picked me up and gave me a choke slam, But then you're like, no, that'd probably suck. That'd probably really, really suck, and I probably don't want to take it. because you can take these bumps for so long after that your body feels up to it. And then the opposite happens as well. Like when you haven't wrestled for a long time and you stop bumping regularly, and you can, there's a lot of wrestlers, who've made comebacks, older wrestlers who've made comebacks, who've said it, you stop wrestling and then the first few bumps you take when you start wrestling again, they feel horrible because you're not used to it. Your body's not used to being tossed around anymore. And, maybe you lose a little of that edge. You lose a little bit out of how to fix it, what I think happened here, on my complete and utter idiot, take here from some guy who is completely on the outside of all of this. I 100% think that Moxley was told, you're going to take the screwdriver from this one guy at ringside, right? And probably that's all he was told. But Moxley thinks this guy's part of the show and probably thinks he's some, local talent. He's some jabron from Detroit who's running the indies, and he's getting a little paycheck, a little exposure, getting out there to network, going backstage, shaking hands. He thinks he's one of these. So he's like, this kid knows how to fall, shove. That's what I think happened. And if anything, like it's just, and I'd agree if this is what happens, it's lack of oversight and it's negligence. It's just negligence to have put the guy in that spot, But Mox is a pro wrestler. And here's the thing is that this is what's lovely here is in this, in this count here, where he's saying Moxley's actions show a clear intent to harm plaintiff, or at minimum, a complete disregard for whether harm was a result. Yes, that's absolutely what Mox was thinking, because he's a pro wrestler. He's in performance mode. He's in a fight. So the instincts kick in, the muscle memory, what you need to do as a pro wrestler to get shit over. And he didn't think twice. Because you're part of the show, shove. It's like when managers and wrestlers are told, don't bring anything ringside that you don't want to get that you don't want to get fucked up, because everything's fair game at ringside. So it's this guy, quite unfortunately, entering a world where he had no idea what was going on. If I'm in his spot, but again, I'm a wrestling fan and I understand this, but let's say Warren Hayes gets called to Little Caesars Arena to come in and he's told, you're going to give the screwdriver to this pro wrestler. I'm going, nah, brother, no, thank you. I'm not doing it. Nope. Oh, come on. You're going to be on TV. Don't give a fuck. I'm not doing it, because I understand. But this guy didn't. He was like, oh, isn't that nice? The circus clown is going to come take my thing, and he's going to go away and do a circus clown things over here. Didn't quite turn out that way for him. Count 3. General negligence as to defendant Moxley and defendant AEW. Plaintiff realleges and reaffirms and incorporates the reference. As a working member of the production crew, defendant AEW and defendant Moxley each owed plaintiff a general duty of taking responsible care for his safety. Specifically, defendant AEW was required to ensure that its performance was safe, its performers were doing their jobs in a manner such as to not expose production crew and the general public from unreasonable risks of injury, to supervise and ensure the safety of all participants, and to prevent foreseeable misconduct by its performers, which could jeopardize the safety of any crew members or members of the general public. Yeah, sure. Moreover, defendant Moxley was not granted special permission to assault, batter, or otherwise touch plaintiff. The script called only for defendant Moxley to take the screwdriver, which plaintiff was holding for him. Defendants each breached these duties when defendant Moxley deviated without warning from the script and violently shoved plaintiff to the ground. As a result of these breaches, plaintiff suffered damages, the extent of which is yet unknown as his medical treatment continues. It's been 2 years at this point, right? Wherefore plaintiff now claims judgment for whatever amount he is found to be entitled, plus court costs, attorney's fees, and interest from the date of filing this complaint. And then we get count 4 for gross negligence. By going off script and violently shoving plaintiff, who was only a crew member, to the ground, defendant Moxley demonstrated a substantial lack of concern for whether a severe injury would result to a production crew member at the event. Defendant Moxley's actions demonstrated a clear and reckless disregard for the health and safety of the production staff, plaintiff. In taking no precautions or preventative measures to protect production staff, defendant AEW's actions likewise show a reckless disregard for the safety of production staff, which goes beyond simple inadvertence. Due to defendant's gross negligence, plaintiff suffered injuries, the extent of which is currently unknown as his medical treatments continue. Plaintiff now claims judgment for whatever amount he is found to be entitled, including but not limited to exemplary damages plus court costs, attorney fees, and interest from the date of this filing this complaint. Is the premises liability? Plaintiff was a business invitee of defendant AEW as a contracted production crew member. Defendant AEW hosted and controlled the event premises and all in performance at relevant times. Defendant AEW owed plaintiff a duty to ensure the premise was reasonably safe for him to perform his contracted duties. Defendant AEW failed to control defendant Moxley and the premise, which was a proximate cause of plaintiff's injuries as described above. Plaintiff now claims judgment for whatever amount he is due. He's found to be entitled, plus court costs, attorney fees, and interest from the date of filing this complaint. I want to kind of get to the damages here. Respondeat. Plaintiff realleges, reaffirms, and incorporates by reference all allegations of paragraphs 148. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's negligence and assault, plaintiff incurred damages including but not limited to medical expenses, disability, permanent and serious disfigurement, wage loss and lost earnings capacity, pain and suffering, exemplary damages for mental and emotional anxiety, humiliation, and or indignity, diminution in business reputation and opportunities, other economic and non-economic damages, other economic and non-economic damages not yet known, all other damages available under Michigan law. It's like all of these, plus all the others that are in the law books. Plaintiff demands judgment against defendants in an amount to be determined by the jury. So he's asking for a jury trial, together with costs, interest, and such other relief as this court deems just and proper. Now, I have to admit, I find it strange that when it comes to damages, we're not plopping down a figure. Why are we not offering up a figure? Does that seem unusual to you? Again, we're not lawyers here. I didn't think that was something you could do. I guess what, you bring the receipts on day one and you give them to the judge? Like, I find that curious, right? I mean, look, the question that outside of what is the amount you're looking for, pal, is the thing here is outside of the money you're looking for. Look, there's a couple of questions that still hang around here. So look, you're not telling us how much money you're entitled to, or you feel you're entitled to. You say you've lost wages and so on and so forth, but there's nothing to corroborate that. Now, I understand that this is just like part one. This is the we're filing, we're doing the filing. So I guess if you exclude things at this point, I think it's okay. I think I understand why a lot of people sort of feel like he's got his that maybe he's just a guy looking for a payday, right? It happened 2 years ago, and people are like, well, why did it take him 2 years to file a complaint? Did he reach out to AEW? We don't know. I mean, he didn't mention that he did. He didn't mention that he reached out to AEW to seek some kind of restitution for what happened 2 years ago. Look, it can take a while. It can take a while for a thing like this to come around. Like, finding a lawyer, amassing the funds to do it. It can take a while. And if his story is, look, I suffered cervical injuries, spine injuries. What was the other one? Shoulder related injuries, and they're still finding things. We don't know what the extent of the damages are. Well, then maybe it did take a while. And after 2 years, the guy's sitting on his couch and is like, fuck, I fixed all of this shit up, but now I'm hurting because of this. And now this is hurting, and now my fingers are tingling, or whatever the fuck, right? Maybe he can't, he's lost strength in one hand. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things that can come out over time. And maybe he just reached a breaking point where it's like, no, this has got to stop. Or maybe he is just coming in here to look for a payday, where AEW is going to be like, nah, let's just take this. We'll take this. We'll settle out of court. No one will say a word, signing the NDAs here. You'll never be entitled to sue us again. Thank you. Good night. Here's your check for whatever amount, right? Maybe. I mean, maybe he's just looking for a quick payday. Or maybe all of this is legitimate. Because, I know a lot of people get really, really defensive when it comes to AEW, and a lot of people were immediately rejecting. I saw it a lot on Blue Sky. People immediately rejecting this guy's claims. It was like, no, this is it was just a shove to the mat on the floor. It wasn't that big a deal. How could he have all these injuries? Learn how to bump. All of that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's extremely callous, and I don't think it's a proper understanding of what pro wrestling actually is. These guys, when it's time to shove someone, they push. They push really, really hard. And like we said, Mox was in the midst of a match. He's, full on performance mode. He, doesn't think of certain things. There's the guy. He's probably a wrestler. Shove. I mean, it's not a good idea. The AEW should, it's very easy, I find, in this case to be like, no, this is bad judgment called by AEW. Bad judgment called by Mox. Now, the only question I have is, what is the extent of this guy's, what's the true extent of this guy's injuries? Because I've been reading all sorts of stuff where it's like, oh, but he's been working for the past 2 years. So has he? Because there's nothing here that indicates that he has. Nothing that indicates that he hasn't at the same time. He did say that he's seeking lost wages. How much work did he miss? Was it a month? Was it a week? Was it a year? He's lost opportunities. Okay. There's a lot of stuff we don't know, and a lot of things could probably make a lot of sense. Do we know how old this guy is? I feel, he's not like, I don't want to go searching for all his personal information on the internet, because he's not a public persona. He's not like Jon Moxley, where you're like, how old is Jon Moxley? And, Christopher Francis Dispenza, it's like, I'm not going to start looking out for his age or whatnot. I'm going to tell you, depending on how solid a case this goes, I would, if I'm AEW, I'd take this to court, depending on how solid it is, because this is not necessarily a great look. And if they feel they have a strong case to prove that this guy's full of shit, well, then they should do it. But it's likely going to go, it's likely going to go to, they're probably going to go discuss this behind closed doors and come to an agreement, a settlement, and that'll be that. I think as viewers of this, as outside parties, there's nothing here that shows that this guy is full of shit or not, that we should outright be making fun of him. I think everything that's written here is extremely reasonable, even though sometimes it's poorly written. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's completely reasonable, and it's just poor decision making on AEW's part to have a guy not involved with AEW, not involved in pro wrestling, be involved in a pro wrestling show. I think that there's a lot of information missing. I think for anyone to really look at this from the outside and make a judgment call and say this guy's full of shit or not, I can't. I don't think you can't either. It doesn't make sense to me. There's really a lot of information missing. So if the guy here makes a perfectly reasonable case, but does he have the proof to back it up? That's a whole other story. But I don't see how you can just blindly go, AEW did nothing wrong. Look at this guy looking for a quick payday. Maybe. But I don't see it here. I just don't see it here. Private Party have interest from WWE, was reported by Fightful Select. There's a lot of wrestling. There's a lot of turnover right now happening in AEW, right? It's been ongoing for a couple of months now. There's a lot of turnover, and you know, secret soiree. And Private Party might end up being part of this group that is being that are basically, people are just saying thank you very much. Well, people, I mean AEW is just saying thank you for your services, thank you for your kind services, and be on your way. What do you think about Private Party, Warren? Should they stay or should they go? Nah. Stay. Should I? Nah. I am not a fan of Private Party. These are guys that I have always been aggressively indifferent in their regard. I'm aggressively indifferent to Private Party. I think they are a team that quickly, back in 2019, let's give them a little leeway. 2020, I think very quickly they showed that they were extremely overrated. They were hired clearly because the Bucks saw something in them and they brought them aboard and did the tournament where the Bucks lost to them because the Bucks believed in these guys and were like, we're going to make stars out of these two and they're going to come out the gate and they're going to beat us for the world title. And they had an excellent match. I'm sure most of you who've seen it remember it. It was an excellent match. And everyone was like, man, maybe there is something to this Private Party. Turns out there wasn't much. There wasn't much there. And, you know, I know it sucks for a while. They were dealing with injuries. You know, Mark Quinn got injured and Isaiah Cassidy was doing his thing as single. Maybe, you know, things got derailed, but the truth of the matter is that Private Party has been given all sorts of opportunities, multiple opportunities, right up until earlier this year to get themselves over, do a thing, be champions. You know, they finally got their run with the belts and you could tell immediately that they didn't have confidence from the big man. The Booker man didn't have much confidence in them. I think that showed. But I think his confidence was well placed because nothing about these guys screams big time. I think they're a nice little, you know, lower mid-card act, but they clearly have designs on being bigger than that. And there's nothing wrong with that. All pro wrestlers have these designs about themselves. They all think they punch higher than their station, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But clearly they see themselves as bigger than what they are. And in an environment like AEW, I don't think they had the chops to do it. I don't think they had I say had because as if they're leaving, but I don't think they have the work rate. I don't think they have I don't think they work up to the work rate standard that AEW has for its pro wrestlers. And that has been a huge impediment to them getting over. Because it's not just because the audience is screaming shots when you come in, that's not an indication that you're over. That's not an indication that your thing is working. May give you the impression that it is, but it's not. And they were given lots of opportunities. Like I mentioned, right? Even when Mark Quinn was injured. Isaiah Cassidy was doing stuff with the Hardys. Like, he was always in the mix. He was always doing something. He was on TV. He was doing stuff. He was showing up. He tried to do, you remember that extremely cringe squeal that he was doing, you know, like a sex squeal. I said that in the most unsexy way possible, but that's nonetheless, because I think it warrants to be called out like that, a sex squeal, because it shouldn't turn me on. It didn't turn me on. I kind of thought it was cringe. Tried to get that over. That was shot in the foot fairly quickly. I don't know, man. I don't see it with these guys, and I've never been on board with Private Party. I've always thought they were more of a nice little team that could come in and just like eat shit and leave. And you could see, and look, they were teasing the split, which is one thing I would have been interested in seeing. Seeing Isaiah Cassidy get a full-on singles push is something I would have been very curious to see. But they were teasing the split, but they didn't. And they came back. They teased doing the split. When I say they came back from that split tease, and they had become more serious. They were no longer doing the velvet rope thing or the dancing. They had different music. They weren't doing shots anymore. And that's what led them to win against the Bucks, because they had, the story was that they found focus. They weren't focused on doing goofy stuff. They focused on winning, and then they beat the Bucks. But once they beat the Bucks, they come back to doing the bullshit and hanging around with ladies of the night, watching matches behind the velvet ropes and phony champagne. They were given opportunities, all sorts of opportunities, and it just doesn't work out. AEW is not there. It won't be their final stop, and it's not it. They should move on, and I think it's fine. I'm not going to sit here and applaud and say, thank God they're leaving, because again, so completely indifferent. And by seeing the reaction of AEW fans in regards to the departure, as opposed to, let's say, recently with Mariah May or other recent departures, Ricky Starks, and I'm not seeing any outcry of people saying, oh my God, what a loss. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing anyone bemoaning the departure of Private Party from AEW. I'm not seeing anything like that. There's like this quiet acceptance and like, yep, best of luck to them. And I'm glad WWE has interest in them. Send them to the warehouse. Have them debut in the audience, with a spotlight on them. Have them cut an ambiguous promo without naming their names. That's the new routine when you debut AEW people in NXT now. Let them hang around backstage. Not backstage. Well, yes, hang around backstage, but let them hang around the hang around the warehouse. Let them be a part of the counter programming brigade. Let the warehouse chant Tony fumbled at them. They're no great shakes, and it's not a big loss for the company. It's not a big. This is the most. It would be the most if they do decide to not re-sign them. It is a perfectly acceptable divestment for AEW to just let Private Party go. And you know what? We're going to see more and more of these. And especially when it comes to wrestlers, and bear with me here, especially when it comes to pro wrestlers in AEW who no longer, or not no longer, but feel like they're part of the past of AEW, right? Bear with me here. There is a contingent of professional wrestlers in AEW right now that if they were to come back on TV and be pushed, you'd be wondering, you'd be taken aback for a second and you're like, oh shit, right, these guys. And they're still like molded and shaped from 2020, 2021. And I'm thinking about the Dark Order, for instance, who are a relic, it feels, of another era of AEW. They don't fit into this AEW anymore. I would argue that Hikaru Shida does not fit in to this AEW either. She is a vestige of another era of the company. I would even be as bold as to claim that Britt Baker is also someone who no longer feels like she's part of the present, and even more importantly, the future of this company. Look, I know a lot of people really liked Abaddon. Okay, don't get me wrong, I understand. But Abaddon is another one of those. Never changed, never evolved. Just feels like stuck in another era. Like imagine if, like, bear with me, like if Peter Avalon was still in AEW. And I like Peter Avalon. I think he was, he's a fine, he's a fine entry-level curtain jerker type of pro wrestler. Great lower mid-card act, right? I think he's great. But imagine, like, think about all these people from that era and how they would fit in today. They don't. This company has had a massive metamorphosis within the past, what are we going to say, 2 years? Like shedding skin and moving forward and trying out different things. There's something extremely different from AEW 2020, 2019, 2020, 2021 to 2025. And it's wild because you're like, well, Warren, it's only been like 4 or 5 years. But yeah, it's been 4 or 5 years. And just look at how different the landscape of professional wrestling in general is. Like 5 years in pro wrestling is an eternity. So I think as it stands now, we're going to be entering an era as far as hirings and people under contract and whatnot. We're going to enter an era where AEW is going to make some choices as to who do we renew and who do we let go. And there's going to be, here's another great example. I'm sort of wrapping it up, but I just got another example that popped into my head. Scorpio Sky. Where does Scorpio Sky fit in all of this? Where does Scorpio Sky fit in a 2025 AEW Dynamite show or a Collision show? Like these people just feel stuck in time. They don't feel like they're part of the modern roster. And these people are going to be, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Britt Baker, all the people that I mentioned, Britt Baker, Hikaru Shida, Scorpio Sky, I would not be surprised in the least if they are just like, they get the call and they say, you know what? Thank you for your service. Big ol' handshake. Let's move on. Let's talk again down the line or whatever, but let's move on. This company has changed so much. So it even makes sense, when you look at Private Party, Private Party, who was a defining team in the earliest eras of AEW, back when, the Bucks were telling us, yeah, tag teams can absolutely main event pay-per-views, right? And back when we all still believed and we thought, hey, maybe there is some juice to these guys before they expose themselves. People from this era are just that haven't changed, that haven't evolved, that haven't moved on. They're going to get lost in the shuffle. And yes, there's going to be, we're picking up people, we're hiring people, keeping an eye on what's going on in WWE and who's being released and whatnot. I think this is the kind of thing that's inevitably going to happen. It's a big roster too. You can't fit anyone. You can't fit everyone on the show. It's a big roster too. You'll notice Tony didn't rush out and sign, the more recent releases from World Wrestling Entertainment. Because at the same time, he knows, like, over the past couple of years or so, his locker room has been in turmoil, and he's probably found a really nice balance now. He probably there's probably a really good balance that's been struck backstage now, where he doesn't want to disrupt that and bring in, lesson learned, right? Bring in a guy like Miro or Malachi Black, or that just comes in and disrupts. We're not talking CM Punk levels, just like malcontents, people that are never happy. People people who thought that they were bigger than what they were slotted in, right? And then they stop showing up for work, or they mope, or whatever. Look, it's a very, very interesting time for all these people that were there from the start, right? And you can call, you can try to play the day oneer cards, and say we were here from the start, so on and so forth. And that's nice. I've worked for startups in my past. And you're there from day one. And at some point it's just like, no, it's, time to move on. Being there from the start doesn't necessarily ensure anything. I've seen people talk about support the people who've been there from the start. And I'm like, well, why? You know what I want to support? I'll tell you what I want to support. I want to support a good, entertaining show. That's what I want to support. I want to support good, entertaining programming on Wednesday nights and Saturday nights, or whatever other nights that the Saturday show airs on. That's what I want to do. And I'll support the talent that I want to support at the same time, regardless. But it won't have to do anything with them being there from the start or not is not going to sway me to liking them more. In fact, I probably expect a lot more from wrestlers who were there from day one than I do from others. Maybe it's because I have standards. Ultimately, let's wrap this up. What are the big takeaways? Here they are, succinctly as I can. Private Party leaving is sure, fine, whatever. That's okay. And if WWE has interest, I hope they go, and I hope they find success, and I hope they enjoy the warehouse. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Clear, their ceiling in AEW is very, very clear, right? It's super duper clear, and they're probably not happy with it. And frankly, they shouldn't. So you go off and you try some other stuff. And there's a lot of talent like Private Party who have been in AEW for a while and who haven't moved on or evolved or changed, or feel like, as I like to say, feel like relics. Maybe relic is a little hard. How about artifacts from another era that just might be part of a next round of people who just don't have their contracts renewed? That's very possible. And the thing is that a lot of these people that might have been there from day one might leave, and it won't bother you. You just might shrug your shoulders and go, it is what it is, and we'll move on. It is now time to review New Japan Pro Wrestling's Dominion show that happened in Osaka-jo Hall. The official name is Dominion 6.15 in Osaka-jo Hall. So you have all the information that you need there as to when and where this match happened. It's like Dominion is the name of the show. 6:15, June 15, in Osaka-jo Hall, which is of course in Osaka, Japan. More promotions should do that. They should just like lay out the date and the name and the venue in the name of the show. That's what we should be doing. Not just like, dropping the name of the city, WrestleMania Las Vegas, whatever the fuck. We're doing no. Yeah, it's not just All In. It is AEW All In 7/12 in, I can't remember the name of the venue. I was trying to do the bit. Can't remember the name of the venue. And you see, if you did that, I wouldn't, if you used New Japan's nomenclature for their shows, for the Dominion show at the very least, I would not be here sitting going like, I can't remember the name of the venue, because the venue would be in the name of the show and you would all be forced to say the name. What is it? Like, it's where the Rangers play. Where is it? Oh my gosh, where is it? Globe Life Field. I had to look it up. All these issues would be solved. There would be no issues. And I wouldn't be looking like a fool. Here, again, 6,525 people is the attendance for the show, which isn't bad. The last time that New Japan was in Osaka-jo Hall was last year for the Best of Super Junior final on June 9th. So practically a full year apart. Main evented by El Desperado defeating Taiji Ishimori in the finals. We also had Jon Moxley and Evil in that lumberjack match, and that awesome Shingo Takagi Henare double countout match as well. 7,254 people were on hand for that one. And we can even go back to 2023 when New Japan was here for a Dominion show, which was on June the 4th at that time. And they had drawn 7,040 people here, with the main event being the IWGP World Heavyweight title, where Sanada defeated Yota Tsuji in Yota's big return match from Excursion. We also, in the business end of the situation, we had the never openweight 6-man tag team titles on the line as Okada, Tomohiro Ishii, and Hiroshi Tanahashi defended against the Blackpool Combat Club duo of Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli alongside Shota Umino. Man, that feels like ages ago, and it's only been 2 years. Plus, we also had Hiromu Takahashi retaining the junior heavyweight title against Master Wato. So clearly, we are very much down over the last two appearances that New Japan has done in Osaka-jo Hall. And look, a significant down as well, especially from last year where we were at 7,200, now at 6,500. It's a significant drop nonetheless. Does this kind of maybe scratch a little at the idea that Goto may not be the great draw that everyone was expecting him to be or thought that he would? I mean, we can still continue to have this discussion. I think I think we're getting close to no longer. Look, let me say that again. We can no longer say, oh, it's still early in the run. It's not still early in the run anymore when it's literally been 6 months now that he's had the title. I think there are indications that he did put butts in seats. There are other instances where it might be a combination of matches that help put butts in seats. But this one here, I believe there are two matches that had the potential to put butts in seats. The main event being one, the global title match being the other one. And clearly none of them captivated the imagination enough to get closer to the 7,000 mark that New Japan had held in that venue for the past 2 years. So I don't want to call this necessarily a black spot, but it's a blemish, and it's something we have to continue to keep an eye on in that regard. But the show itself, the show in and about itself, is a very iffy show. It's a little janky. I'm not sure I'm comfortable sitting here. Spoiler alert. I'm not sure I'm comfortable enough to recommend this show for anyone to go out and and watch. It's like carve out time of your day. Like, I think there's one match here that is absolutely worth your time, but the rest is it's so hit and miss, and there are lots of misses. Look, okay, even more specific than that. I think most of the matches on this show are good to great. I think, and that's really like the saving grace. But when it comes to the creative side of things, that's where the show all falls apart. There are some baffling decisions that were made here. Look, and that's ultimately the lead. This is the lead when you want to talk about Dominion 6.15 in Osaka-jo Hall. That's the lead. That there's just baffling decisions that were made on this show that all serve to reinforce, for some bizarre reason, the House of Torture. Now, I would much rather sit here and start talking to you about this show with the main event, with the matches that I liked, right? But again, I think the lead here is all this creative that led to bolstering the House of Torture, and I would be remiss to not start talking to not start this review without talking about it first, because on top of it, I think it permeated the entire show. I think it had a very negative effect even on matches that had nothing to do with all of this House of Torture stuff. So I think that's where we start. This is our kickoff point. So obviously, we have to begin with the big reveal of who the X was in the opening match of the show, which was the House of Torture versus War Dogs situation, where we had one member of the House of Torture team that was not revealed, that was there as an X, and the thing with an X, with a mystery person, opponent, team member, they're always fundamentally exciting, because you're like, oh, if this is an X here, then they're probably coming up with something fun. And seasoned wrestling fans always take these with a little bit of trepidation, and you add a little extra trepidation when it comes to New Japan, who doesn't always deliver on these promises, on these surprises. And I had been, without having been told the name, I had been advised, I had been told that the X here was going to be baffling and was going to be occupied by one of the worst pro wrestlers on the planet. And I was excited, because I was like, oh my goodness, who could it be? And even I managed, despite me being excited in front of to be confronted with a bad decision, even on that front, even if I was prepared, I still ended up being quite disappointed when it turned out to be Bad Luck Fale, who is now referred to as Don Fale. Now, I don't know if it's Don as in Donald, or Don as in, the head of a gang, of a crime syndicate. I don't know. But he is known as Don Fale. And boy, oh boy, did that live up to the expectation. One of the absolute worst professional wrestlers on God's green flat earth today. It's just baffling to me. And I don't know why he was added. In fact, I have no idea what, Don Fale, I was going to use his old name. I don't know what Don Fale brings to the table in 2025. I am not excited. I don't think this is interesting. I don't know what kind of hold he's got here to be included, to be back on, on shows, on TV, you know what I mean, on the streaming service, doing things. You know how sometimes there's these baffling decisions that happen in pro wrestling, and then we'll sit around and we'll jokingly ask, it's like, I wonder what I wonder what he's got on people to be in this spot, kind of thing. Well, I really don't know. Like I couldn't begin to fathom a proper explanation here. And not only that, but Chase Owens ended up turning on the War Dogs within the match. It was all a ruse all along. People thought that Chase and Fale were at odds, but when you've been watching pro wrestling for a while, some of your instincts get honed and you're like, wait a second. Commentary is putting such a big deal over the fact that Chase Owens and Fale were friends and whatnot. You want to bet they're turning, and their interactions in the ring were always like very non-violent. I think Fale might have just shoved Case at one point, but they didn't engage. They didn't fight each other. There's even one moment where Fale is beating up on the floor. I believe it's Taiji Ishimori. I could be wrong. I don't quite remember. Or maybe it's Malone. No, I think it's Clark Connors. Look, it doesn't matter. But he's beating one of the War Dogs up on the floor, and Chase Owens is on the apron right there looking at him, and he's not doing anything. I'm like, they're gonna pull a swerve, and then they do the guitar stuff, and I'm like, oh, absolutely 100%. Chase Owens is the guy who's using the guitar to bean his teammates over the head with without a shadow of a doubt. So that happens, and that's actually like bad enough. I mean, Don Fale in here is just horrible. Like that's just horrible. Chase Owens, it is what it is. I don't know who can possibly care. Like I don't know who could possibly care. Plus the one thing that could have made me care didn't happen, because from what I understand, Chase Owens on the American indie scene right now is running a cowboy gimmick. He's doing the cowboy gimmick with the Stetson and the leather vest and all that stuff. And I was very disappointed that he did not show up in New Japan as a cowboy. I think that would have made things slightly more interesting. But I guess Gedo vetoed that idea. But look, now he's in with the goofs. He's in with the goofballs. The House of Torture goofballs. So, he could probably pull out the cowboy shit next time they all show up together, right? He might just start doing that now moving forward. Because there's no, like, everyone dresses whichever way they want. Just, and I'm not just talking about Sonata and his fucking Giant Gonzalez outfit today. I'm talking, Red Narita with his Emperor Palpatine cloak, and everyone just dresses whichever way they want. So maybe we're gonna get that. But then the other really baffling decision, and I think the one which turns out to be extremely unpopular, is Doki joining the House of Torture. And that's a crying shame. And it is extremely unpopular. From what I've gathered, people talking, the level of upsetness, I don't think anyone is standing around cheering that Bad Luck Fale is back and part of a regular unit in New Japan Pro Wrestling. But I also don't think that, but I mostly think they're upset, but they're not. I don't think anyone is like viscerally like disgusted at it. But I think that visceral disgust is legitimate when it comes to Doki joining the House of Torture, going heel and joining the House of Torture. Mind you, let's not forget. Doki Look, this is going to be the analysis that everyone is going to have, and it's not, it's not. I'm not going to be providing you with any tremendous insight here. Everyone who's been following New Japan will have the exact same vision. Doki went into his Wrestle Kingdom match this year against El Desperado as a babyface champion, a guy that the fans got behind, both in North America and the Japanese fans got behind him because he finally was able to reach a pinnacle after years and years and years of grind and coming across as a great pro wrestler and finally making it. It's one of these earned situations where he worked really hard to get where he was, and the fans recognized that, and they were ready to support him. Like they were supporting him. Not only they were ready, they were supporting him. No one was upset at Doki winning the IWGP title off of El Desperado. Wasn't it off El Desperado? I believe so. I'd have to double check the lineage. But this, regardless of who we won it against, I don't think anyone was upset because everyone just likes Doki. And he comes into the Tokyo Dome. He gets horribly injured, minutes within the match. And they have to pull the match because he's done, right? He can't do it. And he battles his way back. And he heals up and he comes back. You could not have had a more shoe-in, easy babyface return for Doki, for anyone, for that matter, with this circumstance here, with this perfect storm of circumstance. A guy who worked his ass off to get where he was. The audience, the fans, the viewers saw his progression and accepted him as a babyface and as a top guy in the junior division and were ready to support him. And they were like, thank you, let's go. Everyone loves Doki. Gets fucked out of his Wrestle Kingdom match, which everyone was extremely disappointed in because it was on top of that with El Desperado. Everyone was expecting it to rock. You bring him back as the triumphant babyface making his return against adversity, against everything, the universe plotting against him. You couldn't have had an easier babyface return, but they decide to flush it and turn him heel. But not just that, not just turn him heel, have him join House of Torture, which is a death sentence for anyone's career advancement at this point, right? And Show is the perfect example of that. If you've been watching for a few years, I'm sure you, like me, remember Show the Power Junior, that everyone saw extreme potential in, that everyone was so excited to see on a singles run. That's all we wanted, right? I was part of that group. I wanted the Show singles run. I wanted Roppongi 3K to break up. They had been spinning their wheels for a couple of years when they finally decided to split. And in the meantime, Show was out there having singles matches. And he had a great singles match at some point with Shingo Takagi. I don't know if you remember that, but that was a tremendous match. And we were all hyped. We were all hyped for the career of Sho Tanaka and what's next for him, right? We're all looking forward to it. And then what do? They create the House of Torture. They bring him into the unit as their junior. And it was still very early on, right? So we weren't. We hadn't even seen, we hadn't even began to glean at the worst that the House of Torture was going to produce. But then when it started to settle in and we started to see what Show had become, you're like, a fucking waste. What a fucking waste. An absolute travesty of a waste. Because the other guys in this group, quite frankly, especially at the time, none of them really had career advancement plans, right? Like you didn't plot out something. You didn't build this unit to create a path for Yujiro Takahashi's next big career move, right? Or they also threw Ren Narita in that, who was one of the Reiwa 3. And now, no one even considers him to be one of these guys who might turn around and start leading New Japan into the future. The House of Torture has always existed to promote evil, to make evil a thing, right? So now it's become synonymous with a place that wrestlers go to die. Sonata being in there is the final nail in the coffin of Sonata as a top guy, as someone to be taken seriously in the company, right? Man, what a fucking rapid fall from grace. His Wrestle Kingdom main event was only 2 years ago. Now look at where he is. He's coming out in Giant Gonzalez suits and, wearing big goofy Mario Brothers shoes, big red boots, I should say, big red Mario Brother boots. And that's it. That's all he is now. What, do you think this is going to, do you think that we're going to use the House of Torture to elevate Yoshinobu Kanemaru, a wrestler that I like, don't get me wrong, but he's a scummer. He's the role that he has here is perfect. But again, he's not a part of a unit he's not in a unit that's going to elevate it. No one's getting elevated in this outside of Evil. It's just as simple as that. But let's say, but in this group, which again contains people that you're like, well, what else are you going to do with them? And I agree, like Sonata, like Kanemaru, right? Kanemaru, his role in New Japan has been established for years. Right? Yujiro, Dick Togo, and now Don Fale and Chase Owens, right? These are all people you're like, yeah, might as well just all band together. These are all a bunch of losers regardless, right? It's all people no one cares about. No one wants to see pushed. Who gives a shit? These are people whose ceilings have been hit a long time ago. And I'm sure most of them are self-aware enough to know that as well. So at least they're going to be on TV doing shenanigans with Evil, going to continue to promote Evil as a top guy here. But the wastes, there's 2 guys who are going to be absolutely wasted here, and that's Sho and Doki. Now Doki. Sho was already bad enough. Doki, I think, is tragic. It's tragic. And it's wild that we're going so hard on the House of Torture, especially when you consider, in the light of last year's 10-point plan that was put forth by President Hiroshi Tanahashi, right? He said in his 10-point plan that one of the reasons people were being turned off of New Japan was because of the House of Torture. So he was like, oh, we're going to scale that shit down. And now what are we doing? Well, we're going to balloon up the group to 10 people. So just to make sure that they are fucking everywhere on the card, you cannot escape them. The main event, the mid card, the junior division, the tag team division, we're gonna be everywhere. It's remarkable, and I really wonder what's gone on with Hiroshi Tanahashi deciding to go down this route, or is he unable to get that big of a voice in the room? And the voices that are in the room, the bookers, because don't forget, he's not a booker. He's a suit, but he's not a booker. And of course, his edicts, his voice have influence. But, it's Geto and his crew that make these decisions ultimately. So I'm left wondering, I'm left thinking, has there been some kind of switch with Tanahashi, or is there some kind of power struggle going on? A little Cold War action here, a little give and take. Maybe Tanahashi is like, oh, I want this, and that, and you have to do this, and then and then the bookers are like, well, listen, we can give you this, but you give us this. We don't know, but there's something going on. Because this doesn't even jive. with what Tanahashi wanted. And I think most of us felt that the House of Torture presence overall over the past year had been lessened, not entirely disappeared, but wasn't as prevalent, wasn't as heavy-handed. Jesus Christ. You want to talk about heavy-handed? Look at this show here. And the problem ultimately with the House of Torture is that how long has this group been around? What, 5 years? Since 2021, okay? The group was founded in 2021. It hasn't been a full 4 years. But let's say 4 years at this point, okay? Because it is in September. Let's say 4 years, just to round up. In 4 years, this group has always been the same. And they have always done the same thing. Outside of adding new members that bring in new weapons. You know, Sho was using the wrench for a while. And then Ren Narita joins and he's bringing a push-up bar, which most people have not a fucking clue what it is. It just looks like something you use to keep a door open. The fuck is a push-up bar? But he's running around doing that. And they all have their weapons. You know, what's Chase Owens' weapon going to be? Even Doki brought back his pipe, his bent up pipe. Now I could sit here and tell you like, but you know, it was still nonetheless interesting because Doki went right back after Master Wato, and he has deep history with Wato. Remember when Wato debuted? And like, I don't give a shit. I really don't give a shit because the House of Torture, Doki as a heel in the House of Torture is destined to just do junk, is destined to do garbage. And because there is no other proof to the opposite. There is no other precedent to maybe even remotely have us believe that maybe they're going to try something different with Doki. There's no precedent because for the past 4 years or so, the House of Torture has always been the same fucking thing. It hasn't changed. It hasn't evolved. It's not even... At first, there was a certain novelty to it, I guess. Particularly if you hadn't lived through like peak Bullet Club years, right? And I'm not talking the Kenny Omega run and the subsequent ones after that. I'm talking, you know, early Prince Devitt and then AJ Styles Bullet Club when they would be constantly running in on every fucking match on the card, right? That was a whole other controversial lot. This House of Torture hasn't changed. And they think that by, you know, adding all of these weapons and, you know, doing this and turning the lights off mid-match and, you know, hitting the bell and having powder, you know, and that's like these creative new ways of doing interference. But no, the ideas might be different, but the basis remains the same and stays annoying and terrible and ultimately interferes with the flow of matches. And that's not why I want to watch New Japan. I watch New Japan for pro wrestling. You know, it's still one of the last places as far as Major League Wrestling goes that you can tune in and just get straight up action, right? I don't want interference all the time. I don't want goofy angles and all that. I don't want that. And I'm pretty sure that the commonplace New Japan fan does not necessarily want that either. And I don't think the people in Osaka wanted that either. Because boy, oh boy, was this crowd's wind taken out of its sails. Let me tell you, they started with this shit, came back later with this shit, and it was all shit. And I think it gutted the audience, took the wind out of the building. And that's why they weren't responsive for a lot of stuff that was happening on the show that was actually really good. And ultimately, to wrap up this bit of analysis, ultimately, all of these very questionable decisions, these very, very questionable creative decisions. And there's a couple of other things here and there that don't necessarily relate to the House of Torture, but that still have me scratching my head a little bit. But look, all of these very questionable decisions make me wonder where is the post New Beginning New Japan that we got earlier this year? Where has it gone? That was an incredible show that we had in February. That was great from top to bottom and was full of tremendous potential and directions. I don't think the show, I know, successfully reignited the interest of people who had fallen off with New Japan, but now they're back to that same spot. And it's normal because I kind of feel like, here we go. We're back to Gedo spinning his wheels and doing things that no one is interested in. And it feels like we're going back to an era not too long ago where fans are demanding that Gedo push the new guys and do new things, but instead we're going to focus on some old, tired, uninteresting stuff that happens with uninteresting wrestlers that really people don't want anything to do with, that they don't want to see on their TV screens. I think we're back to the wheel spinning. It seems that way. Now, the other thing you could say is, well, there's an entire G1 that's coming, and that's the place to set up a bunch of stories, right? And that's the place where maybe some new guys will emerge and so on and so forth. I'm like, sure. Someone is gonna have to emerge here, right? But you want to know what I'm thinking about the G1 so far? We'll talk about the field in a bit, but you know what I'm feeling about the G1 so far is that this is my feeling so far. Evil's going to have an extremely successful G1. Like, there's no way on the last major show. There's the Soul shows coming up, sure. But the last major New Japan show before the G1 begins, there's no way you have this guy reinforce his stable, his unit, to solidify him as a top guy, as a contender, as a guy, right? There's no way you're doing that and then having him turn around in the G1 and giving him a losing record. No, he's going to have a very successful G1. Otherwise, all of this was pointless that happened today. And I don't think Gedo is that out of bounds. I think he's having trouble understanding what his audience wants, despite it being quite clear sometimes. I think he's having trouble with that, but I don't think he's out to lunch. Ergo, Evil's going to have a very successful G1. For good or ill. No, for ill. For ill. Like, suddenly I'm seeing, I'm having visions. Brother, I'm having visions of Hiroki Goto versus Evil in the Tokyo Dome. The angle they played today with the House of Torture was a power play, so to speak. It was to establish them as an unstoppable force. There's 10 of them now, and all of the House of Torture is elevating Evil. And what did Evil do in the dog collar match? He won. He won, and he stood his ground. He stood tall at the end, is what I'm trying to say. Smirked into the camera, looked right into the camera, basically telling everyone, motherfuckers, I am the man here. Get ready for me. You are not ready for me. Mark my words. Pin this review right here. We'll come back to it. I swear to God, this is the kind of victory lap I don't want to take. But he is going to have a successful G1, and I am shuddering at the thought of a Hiroki Goto Evil main event at Wrestle Kingdom next January. Please do not blame me if this happens. I just call him as I see him. But there's no way that House of Torture and Evil have not been positioned this strongly for it to all just like get thrown away. There's no way. There's just no way. To counterbalance that out, why don't we go to the main event? We'll do that. We'll do the business end of the card and work our way down as I like to do. We got that situation out of the way. And I kind of feel better now. So we'll be able to focus on the good things, such as this great main event where Hiroki Goto successfully defended the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship against Shingo Takagi. Look, I'm split on this match. I'll tell you why, but not because of the quality of the match. More like the decision, or at least, look, what a weird preamble, right? I love this match. Let's start with that. I thought it was great. Hard-hitting, physical, just the kind of main event in New Japan that just gives you all the right feels. That just at some point hits that other gear and you're like, all right, let's go. Let's just go. And you could see they were building like this. What did I think Chris Charlton said, or commentary at the very least? I believe they said this was Hiroki Goto's longest defense since he won the title, right? At 28-25. So they almost went 30 minutes. And it's kind of been a while since we've had, or at least it hasn't happened often in recent memory that we've had 30-minute or close to 30-minute main events. The days of the 40-minute epic, of the necessary, obligatory 40-minute epic in New Japan, I think they've kind of passed us by. But nonetheless, like this was they took their time here, and you could tell that we were going to be here for a while. And I thought it was fantastic. I thought this match was extremely well built, well executed. Both guys poured themselves into the match. Lots of great near falls, and incredible, like just hard hitting, no nonsense pro wrestling, right? Where the guys are just throwing bombs at each other, lariats and pumping bombers, and they're dropping each other with big moves, the big suplexes and backdrop drivers, and you've got Hiroki Goto doing his harkening back to his flippy junior days, doing sunset bombs, and you've got Shingo pulling out his new burning dragon move, which is like a phony baloney burning hammer thing, and they're throwing headbutts at each other when they're in the corner on the top rope. Like, it's just fantastic. And there's this whole sequence where all they do is block each other's moves. All they're doing is blocking each other's moves until Goto hits the Shouten Kai. And the crowd was into this. The crowd was into this match. But you've got two really fantastic pro wrestlers. You've got a babyface, an exciting babyface champion that the crowd absolutely adores. Shingo is he's a great professional wrestler. The crowd was into this. Two super charismatic guys and cranking it up, making you forget everything that happened previous to this. The crowd was loud and into it, and I was into it. And the match wraps up when Hiroki Goto lands a GTR on Shingo, but doesn't cover quite on time because, look, they've been dropping each other hard throughout the entire match. So he's like, trying to regain his senses and whatnot. So that allows time for Shingo to kick out. But then he does a variant on the GTR, he being Goto, that commentary called the GTR Kai. And that nailed the coffin shut for Shingo Takagi here in this match. Hell of a match. Physical, hard-hitting. I'm giving this 4.5 stars. I loved it. It's the kind of pro wrestling I dig. Like sometimes I'm a simple man, And all I need is guys like this just giving so much of themselves and pouring themselves into their matches. It was tremendous. Now, two thoughts come out of this. The first thought, I don't know what the plan is for Shingo Takagi. And I don't understand I don't know what they're doing with Shingo. Because Shingo, outside of the fact that I'm a big Shingo fan, I think that he's very much viable as a top guy. You know, I think a lot of people say, oh, that ship has sailed. But I still see the vision. I still see him being able to navigate the main event of New Japan and have the crowds be invested in it. He already has a tremendous crowd connection. He's a guy who's fantastic to get the crowds invested in his matches. And on top of that, he's a great professional wrestler still today. I don't know what it's going to take. I kind of saw a scenario where Shingo could win here. I was like, well, it's all a question of, do you want to continue the Goto experiment or not? And at this point, we have to stop calling it an experiment. I'm correcting myself because he's legit. He's the real deal. It was like, is it Shingo who ends this Cinderella run? No, it's not. And I'm like, okay, interesting. Not sure I agree with it entirely, but I also don't disagree on keeping the belt on Goto, if that makes sense. But it does make me wonder, like, what are the plans for Shingo Takagi moving forward? Because I don't see them. I don't know what they could be. I have no idea what they possibly could be at this point. I don't even know. Hopefully they do have something for him, but I don't see it. I have no clue what it looks like. The other thought I have after this is Hiroki Goto is quite assuredly the best world champion in professional wrestling today, bar none. I don't know who is a better champion, who has defended as much as he has to begin with, who has created that level of crowd connection, who delivers and over-delivers in every match he's in, just pours himself into his matches, and has a drawing track record. How about that? Has been shown to put butts in seats. I don't know. I don't know who. And it's not John Cena. It's not, and I would even argue that before Cena, I don't think it was Cody either. I don't think it's Mox. Definitely not. Maybe Ozawa. Maybe. That would be the closest competition, I would say. But within what I watch regularly and the level of matches that Goto delivers systematically every time, regardless of the opponent, he has been spectacular. 7 defenses in 6 months. That's unprecedented. On top of that, the guy's working his ass off because he knows, he probably figures this is going to be his last reign regardless. So if they want to book him and he wants to leave a great legacy behind, well, he's got it. He's building it. It's happening. Everything he's been doing is tremendous without fail. He just might be the best world champion out there. I'm open to suggestions, but you better make a really solid case. But yeah, fantastic match. 4.5 stars. I think I said that already. And this is the one where I'm like, if you have time, if you want, I highly recommend checking this out. You're going to enjoy it. It's an incredible match. Next, let's talk about Gabe Kidd defeating Yota Tsuji to become the new IWGP Global Heavyweight Champion. And this was good, but I think as excited as a lot of people were and as how much I was looking forward to this match based off of their extraordinary match that they had at the New Beginning show last February, this didn't live up to the expectation. And you know how sometimes when I do the reviews, I'm like, oh, it wasn't as good as, the match that they had in 2023, in June 2023 at Dominion back then. But, we're splitting hairs here, 4.425 instead of 4.5, so we're splitting hairs. Here we're not really splitting hairs. Like, I thought that this was substantially not as good. There's a really, really big gap here between the two. And I feel like they built this match in the knowing that they were building off of that previous match that they had, and that people would be naturally afire for that. And the audience didn't play its part, so to speak, on that front. Whatever expectations they may have had to have gotten, big reactions at first, or, the audience just like on the edge of their seat, it just wasn't there. Warren, don't you think that the dog collar match maybe sucked some of the air out of the room and they had to deal with the consequences of that? Sure. Yes, I do. But the guys really didn't work like they had to win a crowd. Does that make sense? They didn't work like they had to win a crowd. They worked as if they already had the crowd. And I'm not saying that was the plan, but that's how it came across. And if that was indeed the plan, it's a little presumptuous to have done that. Yes, there's been a lot of really good reviews and press about Gabe's performance and Yoda's performance in that match. I heralded it very, very strongly. It was a tremendous match. I gave it a full 5. I thought it was a match of the year. I still think it is. I gave that match the full 5 stars, and I was heralding this match saying, look, Gabe continues his great year off of his tremendous match with Kenny Omega, showing that he can be in the big spots, doing big things. Yota Tsuji, on the other hand, I was like, well, finally, like he's showing that he's more than a vibes guy, like I think he is, right? But here we go. We're back into it feels like Yoda fell back to his usual style. He didn't crank it up. At this point, I think we all have to come together and assume that expect that Yota Tsuji is not going to be the work rate phenom. He's going to come in, he's going to use his vibes and his crowd connection, and that's going to be it. But he's not going to light the place on fire. He's not going to be running the pace of this match at 90 miles per hour. And Gabe could, but Gabe oftentimes needs partners to meet his energy. I feel like Tsuji did that at the New Beginning match, but didn't do that in this match. Again, do I feel like they probably were deflated by the deflated reactions from the audience? Sure. I can buy into that. But then again, it's not an excuse. Like, you're a pro wrestler. You should be able to conquer a crowd. You should be able to wrangle them into whatever you're doing, because, if you're talented enough, if you're that excellent in what you do, then this should not be a problem. And yet here we are. And I'm saying all of this and I know that the tone and the things that I'm saying are giving you the impression that this was a bad match, but it wasn't. This is a very good match. There was nothing really wrong outside of the expectation. And you could also argue whether or not it's fair to have this kind of expectation be put on the match beforehand. But I would argue, no, it's not unfair, because they had a match of the year in a previous encounter a couple of months ago, and they were booked second from the top on the second biggest show of the year for New Japan. So even the company knew what they had here, were the potential of what they had. And I feel like these guys kind of dropped the ball on that level. This was still a very good match, but this was not the match anyone was expecting. Fans, smart fans, and I would even say, New Japan, people in charge, Otherwise, they wouldn't have run the match. But they knew they had the potential of something very special, and it didn't deliver it. It was just a really good match that I find never got into that next gear, which is often a criticism that I have of Yota Tsuji matches. Didn't find that next gear, but was perfectly fine, and I think was really buoyed by the last third of the match, where they're just dropping each other with pile drivers and big strikes and and firing themselves up with fighting spirit and the Marlowe stomp, and Gabe Kidd is in there and he's trying to fire up Yota Tsuji by chopping him. Yota Tsuji has nothing left, and he's he's striking, forearming Gabe Kidd, but he's got no sauce in those strikes. And Gabe Kidd fights back and he strikes back at him. It's like, come on. He's firing him up, and you get into that stuff. It was well done. And then they're blocking, Gabe Kidd is blocking the Gene Blaster. No, sorry. It's the Gabe Kidd's running knee is blocked by a Gene Blaster, which ruled. And then Gabe Kidd stops the Gene Blaster with a DDT, then does that leg trap pile driver to get the win. I mean, the last third of this match, the crowd was into it. I was into it. I was like, this is really good now. But it didn't quite go over that sweet spot that we had in February. Very good match. I can't call it, I'm going to call it very, very fucking good. I'm not going to call it great. It's a 3 3/4 star match for your boy, Warren Hayes. The things that you take away from this match ultimately are all things that suck. Are all things that you're like, all right, so when does Tsuji turn it on so that he can be a top guy, right? When does he turn it on to be the guy that everyone has in this vision? Why is Gabe Kidd faltering, right? Were the two matches at the start of the year flukes? Was the Kenny Omega match indeed really carried by Kenny Omega match? And then by Kenny Omega. And then the first Yota Tsuji match was a fluke. Because we haven't seen since February these moments of brilliance from Gabe anymore. And not that he has to be a 5-star battle machine moving forward, but I think he created an expectation for himself. Again, the match was fine. I've seen Gabe Kidd in a much bigger spot, and I see him taking over pro wrestling in a bigger spot than what he's doing right now, if that makes sense. It's just I've seen Gabe Kidd do bigger, better things than this. And I thought we had hit the ground running. Now, and hit the ground running to an undeniable superstar. Now, am I throwing the bathwater out with the baby? Yeah, probably. Maybe I'm pulling the trigger a little too quickly here. We've still got a full half year left, but we haven't seen like the great Gabe Kidd. We've seen very good Gabe Kidd. We've seen the solid Gabe Kidd. He's still a very, very good professional wrestler. So maybe I'm going a little too far here. Maybe I'm projecting my anxieties a little too much here in regards to Gabe Kidd. There's still a full year to come. There's a G1 coming up in which he's in. So we'll see how all of this pans out. But as it stands right now, a really good match from Yota Tsuji and Gabe Kidd that is unfortunately marred with some really sucky discourse. Speaking of sucky discourse, Evil defeated David Finlay in a dog collar match, which was not good. This was just not good. And this adds to everything that we spoke about earlier at the start of the review when we're talking about House of Torture. This has a direct tie-in. The House of Torture interference heavy stuff just impeded in the match. And it impeded it kept this match from hitting real levels of brutality. We got phony baloney, North American style plunder violence, where I was just sitting there going, what the hell am I watching? What is this? Why are we going harder? Why isn't Dave Finlay going harder? The crowd was not into this either. And I honestly don't know what happened. I honestly don't know what to tell you because as much as Evil and the House of Torture annoys me, there was Dave Finlay in this match, and I had faith. I had faith that Dave Finlay would be sitting there, rubbing his hands together, smacking his lips, going, I'm going to tear the house down with this match. I'm going to do such brutal fucking things. And I'm going to let them do such brutal fucking things to me. And we are going to have ourselves, an all-time classic, right? We got some blood. Dave Finlay's not a bleeder. We got some, the blood at the very, if anything was perfunctory, it's just like, oh, because we need blood. So Dave Finlay bled. He's not a bleeder. He did his best. A couple of us were sitting around, talking, thinking, wondering, do you think maybe Dave Finlay saw the layout of the show, knew what the vibe was going to be and how everything was going to be set up for House of Torture and was like, yeah, all right, no. Yeah, basic minimum effort is what you're getting out of me. You want me to run the razor? All right. Maybe he was ready. Maybe he had been ready to bleed buckets. Maybe he had been ready to just open himself up wide and just go nuts. But no, the only thing that kept this match from being a WWE full-on style dog collar match is the blood. Otherwise, everything else in this match, you put that on Friday night SmackDown or Tuesday night NXT, and it's this. It fits right in, fits right at home. The crowd was not into it, and I don't blame them. They were already exhausted at this point. They were already spent. The War Dogs were kind of on it. And you know what made it weird too? You know what made it weird is that and I understand, look, trying to say too many things at once. The War Dogs come out and Gabe Kidd's not there. And I understand that he has the next match, but it's still weird. So, the match positioning is weird. Everything is kind of weird. The vibes are off. You're like, well, Gabe Kidd should have been there. But it would have but at the same time, it would have changed. It would not have changed anything. Because look at what they did. Evil gets in the ring and he has all of his 9 other guys in the ring with him, right? As a show of force. That's what it is, right? It's not just intimidation. It's for the fans also to understand. It's like, oh, the House of Torture, there's something serious now. They're the real deal. Look at how many people are in this fucking group. I'm telling you. I promise you, they did not do all of this for Evil to have an unsuccessful G1 or a putrid rest of 2025 leading into Wrestle Kingdom. There's something afoot, and you should all be worried about. You should all be worried about it. It sucked, and Finlay does a stretcher job at the end, and no one cares. There's no heat outside for Dookie, who when they're doing the faction warfare bit in the match, where Dookie is attacking people with the pipe because they hadn't seen it in such a long time, and plus people love Dookie. That sounded weird. I love Dookie the wrestler, not Dookie. And Don Fale destroyed Dave Finlay when he splashed him through a table. Sure. Guy was completely gassed after doing that too. 1.5 star. I thought this match stunk. It's one of my least favorite matches I've seen this year. We're in the territory at 1.5 stars for me, right? We're in the territory of matches like Minoru Suzuki versus Butterbean. That's the kind of company this match is keeping. Boltin Oleg defeated Konosuke Takeshita to become the new never openweight champion. Which at first I was like, oh, wait a minute. There's no way Takeshita's winning. But then thanks to Chris Samsa and his stats, I was reading them over, taking a look at it, and was like, wait a second. They have a history, and they had a match not all that long ago that Oleg lost. I'm like, oh, well, look at this. Takeshita is going to be in the G1. Maybe this is a good moment for Oleg to get his win back, get the title, free up Takeshita, and have him enter the G1 as a real deal, member of the New Japan roster, right? I'm like, This is very interesting. Very, very interesting. And the match was good. I thought this was a pretty good match. I think, I think I liked their previous match better, but I thought this was good. And Oleg was given all the room to do all sorts of big ass offense, and including his gut wrench throw on the ramp, which was fantastic. Takeshita throughout this match tried to work the lower back to keep him from doing all of his big power moves. But Oleg powered through it. He hits an avalanche TKO, does an F5 to Takeshita, throwing Takeshita outside to the floor, which was great. He does a kamikaze on Takeshita, but Takeshita kicks out. They strike each other some more. A dragon suplex by Takeshita follows. And Oleg catches Takeshita out of the air and does the I think he does an F5 and the kamikaze. My pen, inside information here, behind a little inside baseball, my pen started to give out on me here. So I've scribbled stuff down, but it's very hard to read. Already my chicken scratch isn't necessarily easy to pick up, but now it's like there's spots that don't even have ink. So listen, Oleg won. That's the Bolt and Oleg won the title. He's the bad motherfucker now in the company. And that opens up Kensuke Takeshita completely free in the G1, where you don't have to wonder if, he's not going to win because he's the never open weight champion. He has no titles. Maybe this is by design, like G1 design. The only thing that's keeping me from going in really, really, with full-blown fear that Evil is going to be the guy in the G1 is the fact that Kensuke Takeshita is in it. Without any titles, and, clearly they being New Japan and AEW, have a very great relationship, or at least things are communicated very clearly as to when Takeshita is needed and not in New Japan, and when he's needed or not in AEW. So I'm sure they have this pretty much plotted out for him. I think he's going to have a terrific G1 again this year, probably even better now that he's a member of the roster. Anyway, I gave this match 3.5 stars. I liked it. I thought it was a good match. I don't think it's as good as the other one they had earlier this year, but it was still good. We had the announcement of the field for the G1 Climax 35. Of course, we will take the time to break this down more in depth, but as it stands right now, here is the block composition. Block A is going to be Hiroki Goto, Bolt and Oleg, Yuya Uemura, Yota Tsuji, David Finlay, Evil, Sanada, and Hiroshi Tanahashi. B block is going to be composed of El Fantasmo, Shota Umino, Shingo Takagi, Zack Sabre Jr., Great-O-Khan, Gabe Kidd, Ren Narita, and Kensuke Takeshita. In both blocks, there will be 2 guys who are going to be added because we're doing play-ins like last year. There's going to be qualifiers, just like we did last year. That was extremely well received by fans, by myself, by pundits. I think that was universally cheered as a really good idea. So I think there's going to be, it's not just think that they've been announced. So there's going to be, there's going to be these play-ins that are probably going to happen. I think they even mentioned this. That's going to happen over the Soul, over the Soul tour, which is tremendous. If you ask me, this is a very good way to add in an AEW guy who has to earn his spot in the G1 this way. Because a lot of people were like, wait a second, how come there's no AEW people in here? Well, you know, there is fan backlash going on, you know, that has been going on for a while in regards to AEW's relationship with New Japan, right? And why not just do that? Why not have people fight for their spots? Outsiders is what I'm trying to say. I'm okay with it. I'm seeing a lot of people down on this announcement, looking at these blogs and saying, oh, really? And I'm like, well, okay, then take the New Japan roster and make up, you know, pull me out 16 guys, because that's what we have right now. Pull out 16 guys then that you think should be in their place. I think if I were to tell you to do that exercise, there's a fair chance that these 16 dudes right here would be on your list as well. Maybe we'd switch some blocks around. Maybe, because if you ask me, clearly B block is absolutely the superior block to block A. I think block A kind of stinks, but it's still all the people that I'd put there. I don't see glaring omissions. You know, there's people, well, why isn't Tai Chi in there? Well, like last year, Tai Chi clearly is going to have to earn his way in. You know what I mean? Why isn't so-and-so? Like, the idea is nonetheless, all of the folks that are in these blocks so far, these are all people that make sense. This is like it's your base. Oiwa's not in him. He's going to earn his spot. I don't think I'd be shocked if Ryohei Oiwa doesn't make the G1, but there's the playoffs still coming on. Like, we're not talking about people who aren't in there. We're talking about the people who, well, to a degree, yes, we are. Come to think of it. That was a dumb thing to say. But the base here, like, this all makes sense. I might switch out a couple of people. Sure. So I don't understand. I don't understand why people are upset at this, because there are people who are upset. So, very weak field. Like, all the top guys are already there, and you can just complement with more great workers. Because the great workers that everybody's thinking about, like Tai Chi, like Oiwa, like Ishii, they might all still end up being in the tournament. So, you know, this tournament's gonna be fine. I don't know what the issue is outside of block A being a shit block. I think A block, you know, you've got Evil, you've got Sanada in there. You've got, look, Tanahashi, which, you know, this is going to be billed as Tanahashi's last G1. God bless him. And they should do this. And there's going to be a lot of people who are going to go see these shows just based on that premise for A block. That's fine. But, you know, we're not expecting Tanahashi to tear up the G1 here. Finley, Tsuji, Yumera, Oleg, Goto. There's a lot of quantities here that are like, well, you know, it's all going to depend, but these are solid workers nonetheless. You know, I don't know if it's the most exciting block. No, but there's still 2 more spots to fill out. So maybe something in these last final 2 is going to just drive everything home, or maybe not. B block so far, I think it looks great. I think there's some incredible matchups here, extremely good workers, and then you've got Ren Narita. So they, you know, ultimately that's what it is. Tell me I'm wrong. But the tournament starts on July 19, of course, and we've still got 2 people per block to announce, and that's going to happen through the qualifiers, the play-ins. And I don't think they mentioned the playoff situation. And I hope that it's not as convoluted as it was last year. I just hope, look, if they want to do semis and finals, I'm fine with that. But if they, you know, the thing where the top 3 and then the top guy gets a bye and faces the winner of, you know, so that's too much. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. These tournaments, the G1 works best when it's simple. We're going to breeze through the rest here. Tai Chi and Ishii and Tomohiro Ishii defeated the United Empire duo of Callum Newman and Great Okan to become the new IWGP World tag team titles. See, here's something else that is also a lead for the show. Very eventful, lots of title changes, right? It's only the world title that didn't change hands, right? Correct? I do believe so. So that's something that should be that it's another lead that should not be buried because of House of Torture. But look, this is the world we live in. I think Tai Chi and Ishii is a great team. These guys they're going to be so cool together. And I hope their reign is long and destructive. And I hope they throw all sorts of really fun tag teams at them. Because I'm also fully aware that New Japan Pro Wrestling is not the home of tag team wrestling. But as far as the tag team go, Tai Chi and Ishii, trees, whoosh, that's tremendous. Anyway, fine little match. Crowd is really electric for Tai Chi. Like, he's a guy people just love. The audience just loves him. He'd be a great shot in the arm for the G1, not gonna lie. Yeah, and both guys land their finishers for the win. They haven't figured out a tag team double team move yet. And when they won, yeah, Christ, Ishii just jumps on Tai Chi and he's ecstatic and he pats, Tai Chi's on his back and just did the Black Mephisto. He's exhausted. And then Tai Chi just like dives in and, and he pats him on the back and they're like, cool. All right, fun. All right. I like this. I'm into it. 3.25 stars for me, this match. Then we had Sho and Dookie defeating Master Wato and Yo to become the new IWGP Junior Tag Team Champions. I thought this match stunk because it was full of House of Torture nonsense. This is where Dookie was revealed as being the newest member of House of Torture, replacing an injured Yoshinobu Kanemaru, who came out with his arm in a sling, but he wasn't injured in the least. He got involved in the match and whatnot. 2.5 stars. I don't care. All the House of Torture problems that we talked about before. Hiroshi Tanahashi defeated Yuya Uemura. I thought this was fine. The match was solid, but not the best. Kind of a weird finish too. Uemura had one of his shoulders clearly up. I don't know. Look, the way I see this is that they're both in the same block in the G1. So we're probably setting up a win for Yuya against Tanahashi in the G1. It's a bigger match. It'll have more significant stakes than here. So this is fine. This is a 3-star match. It's the most 3-star match you could 3 stars at. Zack Sabre Jr. and Ryohei Oiwa defeated the duo of El Fantasma and Shota Umino. I like this match. I thought it was actually really good. Obviously there's a lot of references to the Tokyo Dome match between Shota and Zack Sabre Jr. In fact, Zack Sabre Jr. pins Umino and again another definitive win on Umino. I still don't understand this kid. This direction for Shota Umino has been baffling, and it still continues to be. 3.5 stars though. I thought this was a good match. I thought it was pretty fun. I even found that Zack and Shota showed more energy here against Zack when he was fighting Zack than he did at the Dome. I honestly like this. 3.5 stars. I think I said it already. And then we had the opener, which again we broke down. The House of Torture defeating the War Dogs. 1.75 stars for me, this match. We're not reiterating everything. Everything that has been said about this whole situation has been said. We don't need to relitigate, reiterate. Do both. Neither. We don't have to do either anymore. Because that's wrapping up the review. Yeah, listen, a very up and down show marred by that I didn't hate. I know there's some people out there saying this is a miserable show. It's an awful show. It's not an awful show. It's not one that I can outright recommend. There is one great match on the show. There's some good things peppered throughout. Like if you want to watch it, it'll be fine, especially if you want to see for yourself. But It was marred by very bad creative and very bad booking decisions that really did mar the show overall. That's what I think. Not a bad show, not a good show. Janky, I think is what I said at the beginning. I'm going to stick by that. Dominion, what was the gimmick? New Japan's Dominion 6.15 in Osaka Joe Hall. It's a janky show. Yeah, so we talked about the field, but when I did the recording, they hadn't announced exactly how they had said that there were going to be play-ins. They didn't announce who was going to be in the play-ins or when they were going to take place, and the other bit was, of course, the playoffs, which hadn't been revealed at all. So, if there's anything that we can talk about here, like right now, it's this very, very simply. The play-ins are going to happen, as I suspected, during the Seoul tour, which happened last year. So, I'm not some kind of, divining rod or anything. On June 23rd, we're going to get Callum Newman versus Taichi and Tomohiro Ishii versus Dan Maloney for your play-ins into the Climax 35. And then on July 4th, we're going to have Ryohei Oiwa against Don Fale, formerly the FKA Bad Luck Fale. He is now known as Don Fale, and Yoshihashi versus Chase Owens. Last year, when I was really, really excited for the G1, one of the things I was most excited about is that there were no schlubs in the tournament. Like there were no schlubs. There wasn't anyone there wasn't anyone in which you'd get to their matches and be like skip, like automatically, or just like this is a guarantee of a bad match. And there were no Yujiro Takahashis, there were no Chase Owens, stuff like that. No low effort Kentas. And now they're threatening us with Bad Luck Fale and Chase Owens in the G1. There is no way that Ryohei Oiwa is not being included in the G1. Like there's no way. There's no way Bad Luck Fale's body can do a G1 tour in 2025. Like he just walks around the ring and he's gassed. What are we doing here? Like for that's fine. Chase Owens versus Yoshihashi is harder to call. If I have to pick between the two, I absolutely go with Yoshihashi, because with Yoshihashi, you have the potential for some really good matches in there, because Yoshihashi knows how to kick it into drive and make it happen. But, Chase Owens, I don't know. I'm very disappointed because he hasn't brought his cowboy gimmick across the Pacific Ocean. Maybe he will for the G1. Maybe he'll spoil us. Maybe he'll show up at the press conference after he beats Yoshihashi. Maybe he'll show up at the press conference all in his cowboy getup. Yes, he has a cowboy gimmick. And Newman versus Taichi and Ishii versus Maloney. I think Tomohiro Ishii is at a point where he doesn't want to do these tours anymore. And I think Dan Maloney in here is a good idea. I hope he has a better showing this time around. And Cal Newman versus Taichi. This will be a big tell in regards to how the company sees Callum Newman right now and like in his immediate future. If they give him another spot, well, you're going to be like, holy smokes, okay. They still see something in him. I think a lot of us would like to see Taichi, especially since this is the Block A field, right? Newman and Taichi, Ishii and Maloney. Because Block A kind of stinks and Block B blows them out of the water as far as interesting matches, overall drama. Like I think it's really, really unevenly handled. It's crazy how much Block B is better. So I have all that set up. Look, my predictions, I think we're going to have Newman and Maloney, even though I'd like Taichi. I think they're going to go with Newman again. And Oiwa and Owens. I think that's what we're gonna see. And then we have and then the block playoffs this year are going to be they're going to be with the top 3 of each block. So you're basically going to have playoffs after, and the playoffs are going to have quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. And the winner of a block, of both blocks, I should say, the first place of both blocks is going to get a bye out of the quarterfinals. They'll advance directly to their bracket semifinals, and then the second place of either A or B block will take on third place from the opposing block. So basically, on one side, you're going to have A block. The A block winner will be on the same side as the runner-up for B block and the third place for A block. And then the winner of B block is going to be on the same side as the runner-up for A block and the third place of B block. That's going to be the setup. I think it's a little too much. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's, don't get me wrong, it's fine. I think I enjoyed the playoffs. I think the whole idea of the, buys and whatnot, like, we could just go to the finals too. We could just really, really just advance to the finals. I'm kind of a sucker for the days of the winners of both blocks would fight each other in the finals, and that'd be that, right? It adds so much gravitas to block. Yeah, now it's more like, Tony Khan calls his blocks in the C2 leagues, right? Well, this actually does feel like league play. And maybe that's what they're going for too. I don't know. So, that's the setup overall. That's the setup overall right now for the rest of the tournament. There's a lot of people I find who are very upset and are unexcited by the blocks, by who's in the blocks, right? Now, I want to make sure I differentiate this, because I'm gonna set up here. I'm setting myself up to say I don't understand. I don't understand why people are. I don't know why anyone's upset necessarily with the blocks and how they're set up, because they're basically the people you would expect. Now, in case you haven't seen the blocks yet, right? Block A is Hiroki Goto, Bolton Oleg, Yuya Uemura, Yota Tsuji, David Finlay, Evil, Sanada, and Hiroshi Tanahashi. And on block B, we've got El Phantasmo, Shota Umino, Shingo Takagi, Zack Sabre Jr., Great Okan, Gabe Kidd, Ren Narita, and Kensuke Takeshita. And then you have the play-ins. So you have 2 people still to be added per block. And people are like, oh, this is so uninspired. It's so it's so ordinary. It's so average. And I'm looking at the blocks, and I'm like, these are all people that you would write down if you were making your G1 fields yourself. Like if you were doing your fantasy G1 fields, maybe swap a couple of people out, 2, maybe 3 at most, I'd say overall. But these are all people that you would put in your blocks. So I don't understand what the issue is. This is your basic, this is your fundamentals of New Japan right now. They're all in these blocks. Now, if you're uninspired and a little upset because New Japan, it kind of feels uninteresting right now, and all of these picks, just are following the vibe of uninterestingness that exists in New Japan right now. Well, I can get behind that, and I can totally get that vibe. But I don't see why anyone is like necessarily pulling the hair out of their heads here. Outside of certain things, of course, like House of Torture, sure, of course, you want minimal of them involved in this, but you're not going to have one without Evil. And you know, you're going to throw Ren Narita in there because that's what he's for. And I guess Sonata now, you know, is it too much? I kind of think it's too much, right? I think it's a little much. But everyone else that you'd think is going to be in there is in there. Now, did people want more international surprises? Did they want guests from Noah and DDT and All Japan? Again, I can understand that as well. That's not what I'm necessarily picking about. I can understand that you maybe want one or two people there from the outside to make it a little more spicy. But you know, at the same time, when New Japan does this, it's always at the detriment of a little bit of morale in the company. So a few people are going to be a little upset at the idea that someone coming in from the outside is taking one of their spots. That was a complaint that happened with the Best of the Super Juniors. So it's like, you know, I don't know. To me, look, am I raising the roof and telling you all you're all weird because this tournament's great and I'm jumping around and I'm doing the finger guns? I don't know why I'd be doing the finger guns. Telling you all that this is the greatest G1 field ever. No, it's not. It really isn't. But it's not the worst one. And we've got a lot of wrestlers who are very good here. Is it unbalanced? Yes. Is there a little more House of Torture than I'd like? Sure. Could I swap out a couple of people if I want? Would I swap out a couple of people if I wanted to? Absolutely. What? Yes. But looking at the field here, I don't understand why people are upset. What else did you expect is the question. I don't know. It's not hitting me as hard as it would. It's definitely not getting me as excited as last year, but I don't think that's the G1's fault. I think that's New Japan right now that creatively is in a very strange place, and we saw it at Dominion this weekend. I think right now New Japan is in an extremely bizarre creative place. It doesn't even feel like the promotion that gave us the excellent new beginning show in February, where everything felt fresh and everyone was revitalized and things felt electric and good. It's almost as if they tried something out and whoever signed off on that show was booted out of that spot, and we returned to normalcy. We returned to depending on the old guys and having the young guys run around spinning in their hamster wheels. It really does. And it's weird because the old guys, they're all gone. There's two old guys left. There's Goto and Tana, right? Now, Goto is doing a phenomenal job. I talk about it a little bit in the review and you can listen to it, but you know, I think that Hiroki Goto right now is the best world champion in all of pro wrestling right now. It's something I feel very strongly about. You'd be hard pressed to find someone who has the crowd connection, who does great matches, who, you know, is able to put butts in seats, you know, that you can pinpoint on. I think he's absolutely the best world champion that pro wrestling has to offer right now. Tanahashi's on his last legs, but we've been saying that for years, but now it's really, really true. So, you know, he's going to be in the G1. That's going to be a big draw for them. Tanahashi's last G1. But, you know, he's not going to go out there and start pulling out the 4.5-star classics every time he goes in. He can't do it anymore. And that's not what he said. And that's probably why he's on the soft side with Block A. And there's a fair chance that's why it was booked that way as well. He is the president after all. You know, but they're back to depending a lot on the old guys when the new guys should be front and center. And putting your youth over, giving them big spots, putting them in positions to succeed is an indicator of success. And that is something that is good for your promotion because you can see it just as an example with Pro Wrestling Noah right now, who are doing very good business and that are feel hot, and New Japan just is trailing because they're having difficulty refining the mojo. And yet they had the mojo all the way back in January and February. I don't understand. I don't know what happened from February to now, but it really does feel like an entirely different promotion. And especially going into the G1, it doesn't feel hot. The G1, you can tell me the G1 doesn't feel hot, and I agree. But I don't think it's because of, oh my gosh, look at who's in here. It's all the people you would expect to be in there. I don't know what else there is to say. They're not throwing in Yujiro, on top of that. They're not like people that you should automatically discount. Yes, they're teasing us with Bad Luck Fale, Don Fale. Fale's not going in there. He himself, his body, physically, he cannot handle a G1 run. He just can't do it. So, it's like, I want on one hand to understand everyone's and be sympathetic to everyone's gripes about the field, which I think are valid. But at the same time, I don't understand why people are upset at the field. Be upset at how cold the G1 feels, right? Be upset at the fact that they're teasing putting Don Fale and Chase Owens into the tournament. Sure. Be upset that there's a lot of House of Torture involved and that Chase Owens might be another House of Torture guy. Like, those are things you can absolutely get upset about. But the field as it stands right now, I'm going, very uninspired. Well, I don't know. I don't know what would putting in with throwing in some Noah guys in there, would that have made things better? Kaito Kiyomiya, should he have been thrown back into the mix? I know there's a lot of people, at least in my circles, who are very, very, I think they would like to see Shun Skywalker in New Japan. That's not happening this year. I don't know. I don't know what to say. This is all what I expected. I don't know what, the 85% of the field is what I expected. Is it a promising tournament? No, but again, I think there are factors in that regard that are outside of just the talent lineup, if that makes sense. Noah or CMLL guys this year makes this G1 boring and predictable. Has there ever been a CMLL guy in a G1? Because I think, by definition, the luchadors are all they're all considered to be junior heavyweights, I believe, by default. I will say a Zandakan Jr. in here would have rocked the house. I think he could have passed himself off as a heavyweight. They could have just been, yeah, you're fine. As a heavyweight, yes. Tsuji or Takeshita winning the G1? My money's on Takeshita. Early prediction. May change. New Japan between New Beginning and now having some kind of year. I agree. What happened to that promotion from last February? What happened? Where did it go? I'm putting this out there. I cannot but think right now. I feel, and there's no rationale to this, just a gut feeling that there is some sort of power struggle going on backstage between the president's office and the booking committee. And I think it's reflecting in the product. I think it's reflecting in how things are presented. I think there's a lot of negotiation and back and forth, and and what it's doing is that it's harming it's harming the product. I think some people want to take it one way, some people want to take it another, and they can't find common ground. I'm just saying. I am absolutely, do not put in the papers that I reported that there is a power struggle happening behind the scenes. That is not what I'm saying. It's my instincts, my guts. Well, my one gut. It's a good gut. I trust my gut. But I feel there's something going on backstage. Tanahashi, instead of giving office jobs to Okada, to Naito, he preferred to let them go. And again, like I'm not saying his I'm not saying that this is all Tanahashi's fault, but it's curious, right? I know a lot of it boiled down to money. I've heard a lot of stories. I don't know what to believe, but the one constant that I often get when I hear about Tetsuya Naito and Kazuchika Okada is that both were open to staying, but they had some demands, and the company said no. Now, Okada, look, the company basically let them go instead of fulfilling their demands. Instead of like, yeah, sure, okay, if this is what you need to stay, we'll give it to you. They're like, we can't accommodate you, and that's fucking weird, and that's really, really weird. And I think like it has to be perceived as a regime decision, right? It's a regime decision to have to make this type of decision where you let go of two of your company's biggest fucking stars. You know, two all-timers, two legends. It's very strange. Yes, Warren's sense is tingling. Hopefully it's that and not an aneurysm. And that about does it for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Thank you very much for being here and sticking through till the very end. I appreciate it tremendously. If you haven't already, leave a like, a review, a rating on whatever device you're using, on whatever application you're using, I should say. But also on regardless of the device you're using as well. So, it's like agnostic like that. I will be back on Thursday for a big Dynamite review. It's going to be the big Grand Slam Mexico show that we're going to be reviewing. We've been doing some really big Dynamite reviews over the past couple of weeks, and the trend is not letting up. So I'm excited for it. Hope you guys and gals and non-binary pals are going to be there for it. And of course, join the YouTube channel, or at least subscribe to it. And that way you won't miss a single thing when I stream and stuff like that. And those are always good times on the streams as well. So there you go. Thank you again. We'll wrap it up. That's just it. We're done. Go watch Randy Orton and get back to me. And I'll see you next time.